The sky over Luthara was burning. From the great crystal towers of the capital city to the quiet river towns far in the valleys, the people of Luthara could see the flames. Ships screamed overhead, leaving trails of smoke and ash. Buildings that had stood for centuries collapsed into rubble. The Skreth Empire had come without warning. The Skreth were not like other races. They were not traders. They were not explorers. And they were not builders. They were conquerors. They moved across the galaxy like a storm, stripping worlds of resources, enslaving populations, and leaving only ruins behind. For 3 weeks, the Lutheran Defense Fleet had fought them in the skies. They had fought bravely, but their ships were smaller, weaker, and far fewer in number. Now most of those ships lay as broken wrecks across the countryside. In the royal chamber of the Great Hall, the High Chancellor of Luthara stood before the council. His skin, normally a deep silver blue, was pale with fear. "They will reach the capital within the day," he said, voice shaking. "We have no more ships to send against them, no armies to stop them. If we do nothing, our people will be taken." The council fell silent. They had all known this truth, but hearing it spoken aloud made it heavier. An elder counselor finally spoke. "There is one thing we have not tried." Every head turned toward him. "The ancient beacon," he said. Gasps filled the chamber. The ancient beacon was a relic from the earliest days of their people's exploration of the stars. It was said to be older than the Lutheran nation itself, a device built to send a signal across the entire galaxy, even into places no modern communication could reach. It was not meant for ordinary calls. It was meant for moments of absolute desperation. The Chancellor frowned. "You know the stories. The beacon does not call only friends. It calls anyone who can hear it. We do not know who will come." "Better someone comes than no one at all," the elder replied. "If we wait, the Skreth will have us in chains. If we send the call, there is a chance." The council argued for hours. Some feared that whoever answered the call might be worse than the Skreth. Others believed that if they did nothing, their fate was already sealed. Finally, as the sun set behind the mountains, the vote was cast. The beacon would be lit. In a chamber deep below the city, guarded by ancient doors of carved obsidian, the beacon rested. It looked almost alive, a tall pillar of interlocking metal plates covered in strange glowing lines that pulsed like veins. The engineers had studied it for centuries, but no one truly understood its origin. 2 Lutheran operators approached it. Their hands trembled as they unlocked the final control seals. "Once it begins, there is no stopping it," one whispered. The other nodded. "Let it begin." With a heavy pull, they activated the lever. The pillar came to life instantly. The glowing veins flared bright white, and a deep hum filled the chamber. The sound was not just in the air. It seemed to vibrate in the bones of everyone present. Above the city, a thin beam of light shot straight into the night sky, piercing the clouds, stretching higher and higher until it vanished into the stars. Every Lutheran could see it. Some fell to their knees and prayed. Others simply stared, knowing that somewhere far away someone or something might now be watching. The Skreth noticed, too. On the command bridge of their flagship, General Kor hissed as his sensors detected the burst. "They are calling for help," he growled. His dark, armored hide shifted in irritation. "Do you wish to block the signal?" asked one of his officers. "It's too late," Kor said. "Anyone in range has already seen it. No matter. Let them come. We will crush them as we have crushed every world before." His jagged teeth glinted as he smiled. "Perhaps we will have new slaves to take home." For 3 days, the beam shone from Luthara's surface, but there was no answer. No ships appeared in the skies. No messages came through the comms network. People began to lose hope. It was foolish to believe anyone would help us, a shopkeeper told his neighbor in the market. Who would risk angering the Skreth for us? Even the council began to doubt. The Chancellor stared at the stars each night, silently wondering if they had doomed themselves by calling unknown powers. On the fourth night, something changed. The capital's orbital sensors detected a distortion at the edge of the system, a ripple in space, as if the fabric of reality itself had been pulled. The technicians stared in confusion until the distortion widened into a shimmering circle. Something massive began to emerge. The first thing they saw was the hull, black as the void, absorbing almost all light, broken only by sharp lines of white and red markings that none of them recognized. The ship's shape was jagged and predatory, like the skeleton of some deep-sea beast. It was far smaller than a Skreth battleship, but somehow it radiated far more danger. The technicians exchanged nervous glances. "That is not a Skreth ship," one whispered. When the vessel cleared the wormhole, it drifted silently, making no attempt to hail the planet. Instead, it adjusted its course and began a slow, deliberate descent toward orbit. The council gathered in the communications chamber, eyes fixed on the incoming craft. "Send a greeting," the Chancellor ordered. The comm officer hesitated, then opened a channel. "Unknown vessel, this is the world of Luthara. We are under attack by the Skreth Empire. We sent a signal of distress. Identify yourselves." For a long moment, there was only static. Then a voice came through, deep, steady, and strangely calm. "This is Captain Mara Vance of the Earth vessel Iron Promise. We heard your call." "We came." The council exchanged confused glances. The word Earth meant nothing to them. The voice, however, carried no hesitation, no uncertainty. The ship entered low orbit. From the surface, people could now see its details more clearly. It was armored in overlapping plates, covered in strange weapons, unlike any in the known galaxy. Small, fast-moving craft darted from its sides like predators circling their prey. In the Great Hall, the Chancellor met with Captain Vance via hologram. She was tall, with a hard gaze and short-cropped hair. Her uniform was simple but functional, marked only by a small emblem of a blue-green world. "You are human?" the Chancellor asked carefully. "That's correct," Vance said. "We're from a planet called Earth. Not many out here know us. That's fine. We prefer it that way." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "We received your distress call. We understand the Skreth are here. They have already destroyed most of our fleet," the Chancellor admitted. "They will reach the capital soon. I do not know if you have the forces to stop them." A small smile touched Vance's lips. Not a kind smile, but one of someone who had heard this before. "We don't stop enemies. We break them." The Chancellor blinked. "Break them?" "Completely," she said simply. That night, as the Lutherans watched from their cities, the Iron Promise moved toward the edge of the system. Its engines flared blue-white against the dark. In the skies, the Skreth fleet waited, confident in their numbers. They did not yet understand what was coming. The Skreth fleet moved like a dark tide at the edge of the system. Dozens of warships hung in formation, their armored hulls glinting with reflected starlight. They had crushed dozens of worlds like Luthara, and they expected this to be no different. What they didn't expect was the small black ship drifting toward them, alone. The Iron Promise was half the size of a Skreth cruiser, maybe smaller. It didn't follow the usual attack approach. Instead, it coasted, turning slowly, almost lazily, as if its crew didn't care that they were approaching a fleet that outnumbered them 100 to 1. On the Skreth flagship, General Kor leaned forward in his command chair, his scaled claws tapping against the armrest. "What is this vessel?" he demanded. His sensors officer hissed. "Unknown design, heavy armor, energy signatures, unusual." No registration in our archives. Kor's eyes narrowed. Hail them. On the bridge of the Iron Promise, Captain... Mara Vance stood with her hands clasped behind her back. Her crew, a mix of men and women, some older, some young, worked with quiet efficiency. There was no fear in their movements, only focus. Screth transmission incoming, her comms officer said. Put it through, Vance replied. A harsh, guttural voice filled the bridge. Unknown vessel. This is General Kor of the Screth Empire. You are entering restricted space. Identify yourself and state your allegiance, or you will be destroyed. Vance tilted her head slightly, as if she found the statement amusing. This is Captain Mara Vance of the Earthship Iron Promise. We're here because you've been attacking the people of Luthera. I suggest you stop. A deep rumble of laughter came from the Screth side. One ship? You send one ship against the Screth? You are either a fool or a meal. Vance smiled. Not a pleasant smile, but the kind a predator gives when it has already chosen its prey. We've been called worse. She cut the channel without waiting for a reply. In the Lutheran capital, the Chancellor and the Council watched the exchange through the live feed. They're provoking the Screth, one counselor whispered in shock. Another frowned. They don't seem afraid. The Chancellor watched silently. He was beginning to understand something. These humans did not think like the other races in the galaxy. The Iron Promise stopped just inside weapons range. For a long moment, neither side moved. Then the humans struck. It wasn't like the careful, measured volleys the Lutherans were used to seeing in space battles. It was sudden, overwhelming, and precise. The Iron Promise fired a single railgun, Slug, a long, dense projectile traveling at incredible speed. The shot crossed the distance in seconds, smashing into the nearest Screth destroyer. The impact didn't just pierce the hull, it tore the ship in half. The Screth fleet roared to life, their ships surging forward, energy weapons flashing. But the humans were already moving. The Iron Promise didn't fight like a Screth warship. It darted between firing lines, twisting in sharp, unpredictable maneuvers that made targeting it nearly impossible. Its weapons, railguns, missile pods, and strange pulsed energy bursts, tore into Screth ships at weak points, always striking where armor was thinnest. Target their engines first, Vance ordered calmly. A crippled ship is more useful than a dead one. Within minutes, 5 Screth ships were drifting, their propulsion destroyed, their crews trapped. The humans made no attempt to capture them. They simply left them behind, focusing on the next target. The Screth were growing, frustrated. Their fleet was built for overwhelming force, not agility. Against a smaller, faster predator, they were clumsy and slow. In the Lutheran command center, the room was silent, except for the sound of operators whispering updates. They're winning, one of them said in disbelief. One ship is holding, the Screth fleet. The Chancellor leaned forward. No, they're not just holding them, they're toying with them. After an hour of sharp exchanges, the Iron Promise broke away, engines flaring as it pulled back toward Luthera. On the Screth flagship, General Kor slammed a clawed fist against his console. Pursue them! I want that ship torn apart! His fleet began to move, but then stopped. Every ship's sensors picked up a massive energy spike behind them. Something large had appeared. No, several somethings. Out of the darkness, 3 more human ships emerged. They were not identical to the Iron Promise, but they shared the same sharp, predatory design. Kor hissed. It was bait! Back on the Iron Promise, Vance's second-in-command grinned. The Screth took the hook, Captain. They always do, Vance replied. Signal the others. Time to clean this up. The battle that followed was brutal. The 4 human ships moved like a single pack of hunters, striking from different angles, forcing the Screth into defensive knots where their numbers worked against them. One human vessel, the Stone Lance, fired a spread of high-yield missiles into a Screth cluster. The detonations were so intense, they left afterimages on every sensor screen. By the end, only half the Skreth fleet remained combat-capable. The rest were destroyed, crippled, or fleeing into deep space. The humans didn't pursue the retreating ships. Instead, Vance opened a channel to the Skreth flagship. "General Kor," she said evenly, "go home. If you come back to Luthara, we will follow you to your throne world and burn it to the ground. Do you understand?" Kor's voice was a low growl. "You dare threaten the Skreth Empire?" "Not a threat," Vance said. "A promise." She cut the transmission again. When the human ships returned to Luthara's orbit, they were met with silence at first. Then the comms channels erupted with cheers and thanks from every corner of the planet. The Chancellor contacted Vance directly. "You have saved us, Captain Vance. The people of Luthara will never forget this." Vance shook her head. "Don't thank us yet. The Skreth will be back, and they'll come with more ships. When they do, you need to be ready." "Ready?" the Chancellor asked. "We cannot match their strength." Vance's gaze hardened. "Then don't fight like them. Fight like us." Over the next days, the humans began working with the Lutherans. They inspected what remained of the defense fleet, upgrading weapons, and shielding with technology that seemed crude on the surface but proved shockingly effective. They trained Lutheran pilots in evasive flying, taught soldiers how to fight in close quarters, and drilled crews in rapid-fire hit-and-run tactics. At first, the Lutherans struggled. They were used to orderly formations, to fighting by the book. The human way felt chaotic, even reckless. But slowly they began to see the results. Skreth attack simulations that would have ended in defeat now ended in narrow, surprising victories. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the Chancellor walked through the human camp. He saw them laughing around fires, sharpening blades, running maintenance on their ships. They seemed completely at ease, even knowing that the enemy might return at any time. He asked Vance quietly, "Why did you come? You did not know us. We have no riches to offer. What did you hope to gain?" Vance looked toward the stars, her face unreadable. "We've seen what the Skreth do to worlds. Once you see that, you either turn away, or you make sure it never happens again. We don't turn away." The Chancellor nodded slowly. In that moment, he understood why the galaxy feared Deathworlders, and why perhaps they also needed them. At the edge of the system, far from Luthara's suns, the remnants of the Skreth fleet regrouped. General Kor stared at the tactical map, his claws tightening. "This is not over," he hissed. "If the humans want a war, we will give them one." The galaxy was about to learn what happened when Deathworlders were challenged. The Skreth had left Luthara's orbit, but their shadow still hung over the world. Every Lutheran knew they would return, and next time they would come with more ships, more soldiers, and more fury. The Lutheran Council met with Captain Mara, Vance in the Great Hall. Holographic star maps floated above the table, showing Luthara's star system and the surrounding sectors. The Chancellor spoke first. "We should strengthen our defenses and prepare for a siege," he said. "If we can hold the capital long enough, perhaps the Skreth will give up." Vance shook her head. "No, that's what they expect you to do. You'll sit here, waiting for them, and when they come, they'll smash you with overwhelming force. That's how they've won every war they've ever fought." "Then what do you suggest?" asked an elder counselor. Vance pointed to a sector, on the map, deep inside Skreth territory. "You hit them first." Gasps went around the table. The Chancellor stared at her as if she had just suggested attacking the sun itself. "Strike them? In their own territory? That is madness." "That," Vance said with a faint smile, "is exactly why it will work." The humans called it the Deathworlders' way. Never fight on the enemy's terms. Hit fast, hit hard, and vanish before they can hit back. Make them afraid to leave their own ports. Vance explained the plan. The Skreth's strength is in their numbers and their ability to mobilize fleets quickly. Their weakness is logistics. They need shipyards, fuel depots, and supply hubs to keep their war machine running. If you burn those, you slow them down. Maybe stop them entirely. The council still hesitated. But those places will be heavily defended, the chancellor said. Vance's eyes narrowed slightly. Good. The more they try to protect their territory, the less they can focus on you. Within hours, preparations began. The humans divided the work. Human crews would lead the strike missions. Lutharan crews would be trained to support them with fast, nimble ships. Every available vessel would be refitted with new human-designed weapons and armor plating. The upgrades were strange to Lutharan eyes. Human engineers stripped away unnecessary systems to make ships lighter and faster. They added railgun mounts, reinforced hull sections, and installed point defense cannons. The result looked ugly compared to the sleek designs of most galactic fleets, but the humans didn't care about beauty. They cared about survival. The training was even harder. Human soldiers ran Lutheran recruits through drills that made no sense at first, shooting while moving, firing from cover, sudden changes in formation, and simulated panic attacks, where unexpected explosions or alarms forced them to adapt instantly. A young Lutheran pilot named Rathus struggled during one session. "This is chaos!" he shouted after his squad was destroyed in a simulation. "No one can think with all this noise and confusion." "That's the point," said Sergeant Cole, a tall human with a shaved head. "The battlefield is chaos. If you wait for it to be quiet, you're already dead." Bit by bit, the Lutherans began to understand. A week later, the fleet was ready, or at least as ready as it could be. The first target was a Skreth supply depot orbiting a barren moon. Intelligence suggested it was guarded by 3 cruisers and a handful of smaller escorts. The Lutherans worried the numbers would be too great. The humans thought it sounded perfect. The strike force left Luthara under cover of darkness, jumping through unmarked star lanes known only to the humans. Vance called it slipping through the cracks. When they arrived, the depot's defense ships were in a lazy patrol pattern. Clearly, they weren't expecting trouble this deep in Skreth space. Vance's voice came over the comms. "Remember, engines first, weapons second. Cripple them so they can't warn anyone else." The humans moved first, just like before. Railgun slugs and missile salvos tore through the nearest escort ships. Before the Skreth could regroup, Lutheran fighters darted in, strafing the depots, comm relays, and power lines. The Skreth fought back fiercely, but they were too slow. The humans had already destroyed their long-range communications array. By the time the last cruiser fell, the depot was a wreck. Storage tanks ruptured, hangars burning, and fuel spilling into space. The Lutherans couldn't believe it. They had just destroyed a Skreth stronghold, and the Skreth hadn't even managed to send a warning. Over the next 2 weeks, the strike force hit target after target. A shipyard building new Skreth warships was reduced to twisted metal. A fuel convoy was ambushed in deep space and left drifting. A mining station supplying rare alloys for Skreth weapons vanished in a fireball. The humans never stayed in one place for long. They attacked, destroyed, and vanished, leaving confusion and fear in their wake. But victories came with a cost. During a raid on a heavily defended fuel station, a human destroyer, the Havoc's Roar, was badly damaged. Its engines failed after taking heavy fire, and it drifted toward a Skreth battleship. Instead of letting themselves be captured, the crew overloaded the ship's reactor. The explosion tore the battleship apart in a blinding flash. When the news reached the fleet, there was no mourning, at least not in the human way. They raised a toast in the mess hall, drinking in silence for their lost comrades. Then they went back to work. The Lutherans were unsettled by how quickly the humans returned to the fight. But they began to understand. In Deathworlder war, grief could not stop the mission. In the Skreth capital, Emperor Vrax was furious. Reports poured in daily, destroyed depots, missing convoys, and whispers of strange black ships. At first, he had thought this was just a nuisance. Now he realized it was a threat. The attacks were crippling his supply lines, delaying fleet production, and emboldening other enemies. These humans, he hissed, curling his claws. Find them, hunt them, end them. Back on Luthera, the Chancellor watched new recruits drill under human instructors. He was amazed by the transformation. His people, once hesitant and cautious in battle, now moved with speed and confidence. One evening he approached Vance. "I think I understand your way now. You do not simply fight to win battles. You fight to make the enemy afraid to face you again." Vance gave a small nod. "Fear is the best armor. Once it's in their minds, they start making mistakes." "Do you think we can make the Skreth fear us?" the Chancellor asked. Vance's gaze turned to the stars. "They already do, they just don't know it yet." But the humans also knew something the Lutherans didn't. This kind of war couldn't last forever. The Skreth would adapt. They would stop chasing and start setting traps, and when that happened, the Deathworlders would have to decide whether to keep fighting in the shadows or meet the Skreth head-on. At the edge of known space, scouts reported something disturbing. A massive Skreth fleet assembling, larger than anything the humans had yet faced. The war was about to change. The first warning came from a human scout ship. Its pilot, Lieutenant Harper, burst into the fleet's comm channel with one short message. "They're coming! All of them!" Moments later, the hollow table in Luthara's great hall filled with red markers, each one a Skreth warship. The markers multiplied until the Chancellor could barely see Luthara's star through the swarm. Captain Mara Vance stood with her arms crossed, studying the display. "That," she said calmly, "is a hammer blow." "How many?" the Chancellor asked. "Too many for you to meet in open battle," Vance replied, "but maybe just enough for me to kill." The Lutheran Council erupted in arguments. Some wanted to evacuate the cities and hide in the mountains. Others wanted to call for aid from distant allies. Vance listened, then shook her head. "By the time you call for help, the Skreth will already be here. And if you hide, they will burn your world from orbit." The Chancellor looked at her. "Then what choice do we have?" A slow smile spread across Vance's face. "We don't run. We make them come right where we want them, and then we close the door." Vance gathered her human commanders in the war room. The plan she laid out was risky, reckless even, but it was pure Deathworlder thinking. "We're not going to fight their whole fleet at once," she explained. "We'll break them apart. We'll make them chase us through places they don't understand. Asteroid fields, gravity wells, plasma storms. Every time they split up, we hit the stragglers. Every time they regroup, we vanish." One of her officers, Commander Ortiz, frowned. "And when they finally reach Luthera?" "That," Vance said, "is when we spring the trap." Step 1 began before the Skreth fleet even reached the system. Human and Lutheran strike groups darted in and out of their formation, firing from long range, picking off scouts and escorts. Each attack was quick, less than 3 minutes, and then the attackers were gone. The Skreth, frustrated, sent faster ships to chase them. Those ships disappeared into asteroid belts and never came back. By the time the main fleet approached, Luthera's outer moons, it was already missing dozens of smaller vessels. Step 2 was psychological. Human comm teams hacked into Skreth frequencies and played distorted messages, fake distress calls, phantom fleet movements, even the voice of the Skreth Emperor demanding answers. The Skreth captains began to mistrust each other, holding back, instead of pushing forward. The humans called it shaking the hive. Finally, the main fleet reached Luthara. From orbit, the Skreth saw exactly what they wanted to see. a planet with minimal defenses. Only a handful of human ships waited. In high orbit, their weapons cold. The Skreth commander laughed over the comms. "You are fools to face us here. We will crush you in one blow." Vance's reply was almost bored. "You won't even get that chance." The Skreth advanced, their largest battleships moving into bombardment position. That's when Step 3 began. Hidden among Luthara's orbital debris were hundreds of disguised platforms, old satellites, cargo containers, even hollowed-out asteroids. At Vance's signal, they came alive, revealing missile racks, rail guns, and beam turrets. The empty space above Luthara turned into a storm of fire. Skreth ships at the front of the formation were shredded before they could raise shields. Others tried to scatter, but human mines detonated in their paths, crippling engines. Then the real Deathworlder trick revealed itself. The weak human fleet in orbit wasn't weak at all. Every ship had been powered down, masking its reactor, signature. Now they roared to life, launching straight into the Skreth's broken formation. Railguns fired at point-blank range, punching through armor. Boarding pods smashed into Skreth hulls, spilling human marines inside. Vance's flagship, the Iron Resolve, cut a Skreth cruiser in half with a sustained railgun barrage, then swung to target a second. From the planet below, the Lutherans watched the sky flash with silent explosions. For the first time in generations, they saw Skreth ships falling toward their world, not as conquerors, but as burning wreckage. The Chancellor stood in the command bunker, gripping the rail. "By the stars! They're winning!" But the battle was far from over. The Skreth commander, enraged, ordered his remaining ships to push through the trap. They took heavy losses, but some broke into low orbit. Luthara's capital shook as plasma bombardments struck the outer districts. Firestorms swept through the forest canopy around the city. Vance's voice came over the comms. "They've breached the perimeter. Ground teams, it's your turn." On the surface, human and Lutheran soldiers fought side by side. Lutheran snipers picked off Skreth infantry from the rooftops, while human heavy gunners tore through their armored walkers. The streets became a maze of traps, mines under rubble, barricades with hidden gun ports, and alleyways rigged with explosives. Every block cost the Skreth lives. Sergeant Cole's squad fought from a collapsed bridge, holding off 3 times their number. "Keep firing," he shouted. "They bleed, same as us." In orbit, the battle raged on. The Skreth fleet was down to less than half its original size, but the survivors were dangerous. 2 battleships managed to lock weapons on the Iron Resolve, pounding it with plasma fire. Vance refused to retreat. "Bring us closer," she ordered. Her crew obeyed, driving the Resolve right between the 2 battleships. At that range, their heavy guns tore through the enemy's midsection. Both Skreth ships exploded almost at the same moment. When the shockwave cleared, the Iron Resolve was still flying. After 10 hours of fighting, the Skreth began to pull back. The Deathworlder trap had worked. The fleet was crippled, its supply lines in ruins, and its ground forces stranded. Some Lutherans wanted to chase the retreating ships, but Vance refused. "Let them run," she said. "The more they fear coming back, the longer you have to rebuild." That night, the skies above Luthara were clear. The fires in the capital still burned, but the people looked up and saw no Skreth ships. The Chancellor met Vance on the balcony of the council hall. "You saved us again," he said, "but I can't help wondering, will they return?" Vance didn't look away from the stars. "Oh, they'll return. But when they do, we'll be ready. And next time, we won't just defend Luthara. We'll take the fight to their home." In the far reaches of Skreth space, Emperor Vrax sat in silence, watching a recording of the battle. He had underestimated the humans once. He would not do so again. His eyes narrowed. "If the Deathworlders want war," he growled, "then war they shall have." The battle at Luthara was over. But the war had only just begun. Captain Mara Vance stood on the bridge of the Iron Resolve, staring out at the distant stars. The Skreth fleet had been broken, but the enemy's hearts still beat strong in their home system. They will not give up, Vance said quietly to her second-in-command, Lieutenant Harper. No, Harper replied. They'll come for us again, and with more ships. Vance nodded. Then it's time we stop running. Back in the Great Hall, the Chancellor met with the human leaders. He looked tired but determined. The Skreth Emperor is preparing his forces for a final strike, the Chancellor said. We cannot wait for him to come here again. We must end this. Vance smiled, a small, sharp smile. I agree. We don't just defend, we hunt. The plan was bold and dangerous. Take the fight to the Skreth homeworld, deep inside enemy space. Destroy their fleet before it could gather strength. Break their empire's will. The humans called it the hunt. The journey through enemy space was long and tense. The Iron Resolve and its companion ships moved like shadows through dark star lanes, avoiding Skreth patrols and minefields. Every system they passed was a reminder of the Skreth's cruelty. Worlds ravaged by war, enslaved populations, and ruined cities. We're not just fighting for Luthera, Vance told her crew. We're fighting for every world they've destroyed. When they finally arrived, the Skreth homeworld was massive and foreboding, a gas giant surrounded by countless moons, each housing shipyards, weapons factories, and military bases. The Skreth fleet was anchored in orbit, hundreds of ships, ready for war. The humans didn't hesitate. The attack began with a surprise strike. Human stealth ships slipped through enemy sensors, launching missiles that tore through hangars and fuel depots. At the same time, the main fleet burst into battle, their weapons blazing. Skreth warships scrambled to respond, but the humans fought with relentless speed and cunning. Captain Vance led the charge in the Iron Resolve. Her ship dodged heavy plasma blasts, closing in on the Skreth flagship, a massive dreadnought bristling with weapons. Vance ordered her crew to fire everything. Railguns hammered the dreadnought's hull, tearing through armor plates. Boarding pods launched, and human marines poured into the enemy ship, fighting fierce battles in dark corridors. On the ground, Lutheran commandos sabotaged weapons factories and communication arrays, spreading chaos throughout the Skreth defenses. The Skreth Emperor, watching from his palace, realized his empire was crumbling. He sent orders to retreat, but many ships were already destroyed or disabled. The battle lasted for hours. The Skreth flagship, finally, exploded in a blinding flash, signaling the death of their fleet's command. With no leader, the Skreth fleet faltered and began to withdraw. As the humans and Lutherans watched the enemy retreat, Captain Vance sent a message to the galaxy. The Skreth Empire will no longer threaten innocent worlds. This is our promise. Back on Luthera, the people celebrated. The fires of war still burned, but hope burned brighter. The Chancellor looked up at the stars, knowing that with Deathworlders like the humans, their future was safe. The galaxy had learned a new truth. When Deathworlders appeared, they did not just answer pleas for help. They became hunters who never let their prey escape.